Hello, and welcome to your next lesson on pivot tables. Today, we'll discuss refreshing and updating our existing data. You can make changes to your pivot table simply by updating the data source, as today's video will demonstrate. We'll be working from the pivot table we created in the last video. I have stored a copy titled COVID-2 for those of you who did not save your file. And with that being said, let's go ahead and open the worksheet and dive into the lesson. Okay, so here we are on the COVID-2 tab, and I would like to make some changes to our years. I think I would like to abbreviate years, and to do this, I will simply make an update to my data source. Let's go to the COVID data tab where our data source resides. Now let's go ahead and select column D. We're going to go to the Home tab. We're going to go to the Editing group, and we're going to get the drop down for Select and Find. Let's go ahead and say Replace. Okay, now let's go ahead and type years, and then we'll abbreviate it by saying capital YRS. Now let's go ahead and say Replace All. As you can see, we have over 50,000 records updated. Let's go ahead and say OK. Okay, so for demonstration purposes, I would like to change age group to age GRP. So let's go ahead and select age group from our COVID data. And let's go ahead and change group to GRP. So we'll just abbreviate that to make it shorter. And let's go back to our COVID-2 tab. Okay, now as you can see, the update has not been made. Let's go ahead and click on our pivot table. Now you may recall in the last video, I indicated when the pivot table is selected that the Pivot Table Analyze tab and the Design tab becomes accessible. Let's go ahead and click the Pivot Table Analyze tab. Okay, so let's go ahead and select the Refresh button drop down, and let's go ahead and say Refresh. Okay, so now because age group has changed and it is now abbreviated, my chart has changed. So the only thing I need to do now is select my updated title, and I'm going to go ahead and drag it back to the column spot. And now as you can see, my pivot table is reflecting the updates. You can see the updates in my age group title as well as the updates in my years. Now you can also insert a new column or row directly into the data. Let's go to the Data tab. So if I wanted to insert a column before my last column, I can refresh and that will be reflected in my COVID table. Let's go ahead and select column I. Let's do a right click and say Insert. And then in the title, I'm just going to say New Column. Okay, now let's head back over to the COVID-2 tab. And let's go ahead and refresh the data. And now you can see my new column is available. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead back over to my COVID data tab. I'm going to do a right click on the new column and I'm going to simply delete it. Let's go back over to the COVID-2 tab. Let's get the drop down and let's go ahead and refresh again. Okay, so what we've just demonstrated is how you can refresh and update your data. The next exercise will change the data. Okay, so as indicated, this record holds over 50,000 records. I'm going to go ahead and just reduce the size by changing the data source. Okay, so again, let's make sure that we have our pivot table selected. Let's go up to Pivot Table Analyze. Let's get the drop down for Change Data Source and select Change Data. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select cell A1. I'm going to drag it over to I1. And I'm going to go ahead and drag it all the way down. Now what we can do here is, because I know that this record contains over 50,000 records, I'm just going to go ahead and type 30,000. meaning I only want to capture the first 30,000. Then I'm just going to simply say OK. Now let's head back over to our pivot table. Now as you look at my grand total, you'll see that it reflects 23,643. That is because I still have filters on my sex, age, and race. Otherwise, it will reflect that 30,000. So let's go ahead and make another change to our data source. Let's get the drop down for change data source. This time, let's go ahead and select A through F. And again, let's drag it all the way down. And again, because I know that this contains 50,000 records, I'm going to go ahead and type 50,000. Now let's go ahead and say OK. Alright, now so we're back on our pivot table. Now as you look at your fields, you'll see the records that I omitted are no longer visible in our group. And it is just that easy to make adjustments and updates to your record. So let's go ahead and save our changes to COVID-2, and we're going to wrap up the lesson. The next video will show you how to automatically update your pivot table without making manual adjustments. I hope you found this information helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Congratulations on completing another video and on your commitment to learning this program. I hope that you are getting the most out of our Level Up lessons, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.